who best to moderate the panel than somebody who's been working for 25 years in the industry and has dedicated most of his professional career to lending to small business and understands, has been in, has talked to many of you and understands what you've been going through. So Phil Zeman is our moderator. He is Senior Vice President of Floridian Bank, one of our sponsors, so thank you very much to Floridian Bank. He also worked with First Union Corporation and First Florida. And even more important, wherever he's been, in every city where he's gone, he always looks for a SCORE, and he's been a SCORE volunteer in many of those cities and has worked with many of our clients, helping them and guiding them in the lending process. So please help me welcome Phil Zeman.
Thank you, Maria, and thank you all for attending today. I have had the esteemed opportunity to be the moderator for this panel for the second year in a row. As Lois might have mentioned earlier, this is our second year doing this. The first year we did it last year, we did it on the coattails of the 50th anniversary of SCORE, and that's all we were going to do. But we had such great success that we decided to make it an annual event. And it's only because of the community, the business community in the Orlando area that asks us to do that. And I wanted to mention, add on to what Jerry was saying earlier, Jerry Ross, the executive director of NEC, because when he was talking about this, I was like, this is why I'm in Orlando. I'm from South Florida. As Maria mentioned, I've been in Louisville, Kentucky, many cities, Louisville, Kentucky, Charlotte, Fort Lauderdale, Jacksonville, Melbourne, and all of them are great places. And I had been here about 2 years. I've been here 3 years now. About a year or so ago, I'm like, there's something about this community that just excites me about what's going on. And as a banker, I see a lot about businesses, small businesses. I see successful business owners like these folks here that you'll hear about in a minute. But what Jerry said really was impactful to me earlier. And if you didn't hear it, I just want to reiterate some of the things. Entrepreneur magazine rated Orlando one of the top 10 best cities to start a business. And they associated a name with each one of those cities. And collaborator was what they tied Orlando to. And it was interesting to hear that because I've been on a lot of committees that were trying to bridge the gap, to bring alternative funding sources to folks like yourself. We as the bankers aren't the ones. We're traditional, but we're traditional funding sources, not alternative. But what's bringing those resources and those alternative funding sources is the collaboration between organizations like SCORE and all the partners that are here in this building. I went through the list, and it's amazing to me what resources we have here at NEC. And they're all nonprofit organizations, so their marketing budgets aren't available to really get the word out. So they rely on bankers like ourselves, CPAs, and other organizations, but that just doesn't do enough of it. And just to hear these recognitions that Orlando got is amazing to me. The Business Journal, U.S., each community has their own business journal, but there's a national business journal organization, and they took the top 55 cities in the country, and Orlando was the best city for small business. These aren't just, this is real accolades for our community that we have right here. And again, you're going to hear from a group of entrepreneurs here that went all the way to Shark Tank and got access to funding there. Last year we had another company, same thing, went all the way, got funding, they took funding, and they're successful today. You're going to hear about another group that obtained funding through this Quick Starter program, and then you're going to hear about two other resources, representatives that have alternative sources of funding as well. And again, that's why we're here today, and that's why we'll be here next year, and that's why folks like Maria and myself, when we're out in the business community, are going to brag about NEC and Orlando because the talent's here. I served on one other, I attended another seminar through the chamber in February, And they had a group of venture capitalists there on the panel, and they weren't from here. They say the VC community is very weak in Central Florida, in Florida in general. They said there's basically 4 venture capitalist firms in Florida, 2 are remotely active. Most all of them, as you can imagine, are out in Silicon Valley, Boston, DC, and the challenge is bringing them here simply because the talent's here. We have companies that are inventing new products and services every day out at Research Park at UCF and all around our community here. And what's happening is a lot of those companies are going where the capital is. And we can't have that. So there's a huge effort going on in Central Florida to bring these alternative sources of capital to you. And I encourage you to continually to seek them out because they are here. We traditional bankers are trying to bridge the gap to get you to be ready for bank financing, which is typically less expensive. But nonetheless, again, I'm happy to be on here. So I'm going to briefly introduce our panelists, and then we'll circle back and have them talk a little bit about what they do as far as the alternative funding representative sources, and then the entrepreneurs that have been successful, terribly successful, and utilizing the talents that they have to bring their product to the marketplace. So I'll start with Julie Gaines. Julie is with LSQ. LSQ Funding is locally here in Orlando, and they do asset-based accounts receivable and factoring. And we utilize it a lot in our business. We partner with them, and she'll tell you how that works. And it's an alternative source that is very, very viable source for the companies that fit that type of situation. Adriana Contreras is with Axion, who is a NEC partner right here around the corner of the hallway, and they do micro lending. They do funding for startup businesses and other early stage type funding sources. So she'll talk a little bit about how that program works and how you guys can get in contact with her. Then we have Steve Fisk. Steve is here representing Unikey, which is a very interesting product. His partner, Phil Dumas, could not be here, so Steve's pitch hitting. He and Phil went down the route of the Shark Tank experience, and he'll share a little bit about that. And then we have Jeremy Scheinberg and Chris Harden, and they are with Trobo, and they have a unique product. They are former design engineers in the Disney industry, and they came up with this concept that, again, I think is brilliant, and I think is going to be extremely successful. And they have obtained their funding through Kickstarter, which is a crowdfunding source, and they'll talk a little bit about that. And before I go back to Julie, I'm going to say one final thing, and I'll be quiet the rest of the time. But in all my years in banking, I've seen a lot of successful business people and some that were not so successful. And there's one, we have the resources here. All the resources you need to be successful in business are right in this building at your fingertips. Because if they don't have it here, they know where to go to find Julie or some of these other funding sources, but it's all right here. And the one common ingredient every successful entrepreneur that I've seen in my 25 years is the passion. The passion is the steroid. It's the steroid that's going to fuel the fire of creativity, that's going to make them figure out how to do whatever they need to do. Find the funding source, find the marketing strategy, how to differentiate from their competition, how to identify what their market capacity is going to be, how to deliver it. It's the passion that does that. And as an entrepreneur, that's the one thing you got to check yourself on. Are you a former employee that is tired of being an employee, or do you truly have a passion over a product or service? And if you do have that, you will be successful because the resources are right here. So with that, I'll turn it over to Julie. Julie, thank you for coming, and tell us a little bit about yourself and LSQ.
Thank you. I think I can hear myself. That's kind of loud. Thank you, and thank you guys for all carving out time to come out this afternoon. I know that your time is valuable, so hopefully today you're going to learn several new things about the resources that are available to you right here at the NEC, and also some ideas that work for other folks, because let's face it, we don't always have to recreate the wheel. I am a business development officer for LSQ Funding Group. We're headquartered right here in Maitland. We're a national company that provides asset-based solutions to companies that need working capital to grow. What does that mean? We look for startups. We look for companies that might have had a bump in their sales cycle or in their life cycle to where the bank says, you got to find another lender until you clean up your balance sheet. We work with those companies. And we also work with companies that grow way too fast for the bank. And what does that mean? The bank makes their decisions based on your history. They look at your credit report, they look at your sales, they look backwards. Asset-based lenders look forward. So we're going to look at projections, how your management team, how well your management team can execute, and where you're trying to get to. And when you get to that point where you've executed on your plan and you've done well, the bank comes and picks you up. And that's basically where you want to be, the bank. I call that Mecca. There's a lot of choices that entrepreneurs have today when you're getting started. Some involve friends and family and giving up some equity in the company. Some involve investors and giving up a portion of equity in your company. Asset-based lenders don't necessarily require that. In fact, LSQ does not require that you give up any portion of your company to do business with us. When I say asset-based lending, we specifically focus on your accounts receivable, business-to-business accounts receivable, and inventory. And we look at those two and we build a line of credit for you around that. That's what we do. We also work with companies that maybe you just got your first order for some widget that you make that Walmart likes, and you don't even have the money to pay your manufacturer. Instead of saying no to that order, you can call me and we'll put a puzzle together for you to help meet that gap with your supplier to get your product to Walmart. Once you bill Walmart, you have a receivable. We pay off your supplier. We go to the next order. Most of the companies that I work with in a startup mode use that puzzle. It's not complicated, okay? So those are a couple of things that we do to help you get started. We're not a long-term solution for many of our clients. We don't want to be. Our goal is to keep you on the conveyor belt to less expensive, less cumbersome forms of financing, which is what Phil does, okay? And that's the goal, to help you get to Mecca.
And I'll just add to that a little bit, because I had a situation not too long ago. It wasn't Julie's firm, but it was a factor. And as Julie said, they brought us in pretty early in the stage. We knew it was a company that we ultimately wanted to bank. We wanted to bank them right now, but you know, we are governed by the government, and we have to have our assets meet certain credit criteria. And like Julie said, the balance sheet has to meet certain standards, but we knew that at some point the company was going to get there. So we worked together. We acted as if we were their banker at that point in time. They were growing so fast and they weren't able to, you know, retain earnings, but once they started to plateau, they did retain the earnings, and then we transitioned from their product to our product. So they're a great resource for the type of capital requirements or the funding sources you need, but they're also going to be putting you in contact with the bankers to help you, not just my bank, or they'll put you in contact with 3 or 4, because we want to make sure it's an objective opportunity for you to fit for the right bank that would fit with you. But they'll bring a banker in early on, so that transition is smooth as they unwind out of the factor line.
That's a good point. I like to say LSQ is a line of credit with training wheels for a lot of companies. That's what we do. We get you to the bank. We get a line of credit from the bank. We have the training wheels to get you there.
Thank you, Julie. Adriana, tell us a little bit about Axion and the micro lending program that you have there.
Sounds good. Hi, everyone. I'm Adriana. I'm the Loan Operations Associate for Axion. Okay, Axion was actually established in 1991 in New York. We're a nonprofit micro lender. Okay, we're considered to be the domestic. Hello?
There you go.
There we go. Yeah, sorry. Like I was saying, we're considered to be the domestic arm of Axion International, a global nonprofit microfinance organization. Okay, we're based, like I said, in New York. We actually have an office here in Orlando at the NEC. We also have an office in Miami that has been established for almost 15 years now. So if you're looking about getting small business loans for your business, whether it comes to getting equipment, working capital, you need to consolidate some of the debt that you have, credit cards regarding your business or anything like that, we do offer several loans. Usually our traditional business loan is up to $50,000. Okay, the requirements are pretty simple. You need a credit score of 575 or higher. Keep that in mind, it's personal credit, not business credit. Less than one bankruptcy in the last 12 months, no foreclosures in the last 2 years, and no more than $3,000 in past due debt. Past due debt is child support, collections, medical bills, charge of accounts that you may have regarding credit cards or anything like that, as well as no late payments towards your mortgage or rent in the last 12 months. Okay, usually how the process works is you fill out an application. You can either do it online through our online system, because we also provide loans through the entire 50 states, or you can fill out a paper application that I can go ahead and give you, or email or anything like that. Once we have the application, we process it. We pull your credit. We see if you actually do pre-qualify for our loan with us. We use the highest unsecured trade line. Trade line is the highest credit card limit that you have available on your credit, of course. And then we see the terms, whether you pre-qualify for $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. One of the benefits about getting a microloan with us, we don't require any collateral unless are for loans that $20,000 and up. If you have a vehicle that's being paid for, if you have equipment for a storefront location, then we may require the collateral if you need more funding, more than $20K, of course. We also have a startup loan. It's called a Sprout. Okay, the maximum loan amount for this one is $10,000. The two main requirements are you need to be home-based, so you need to have an office space, you need to work from home or from a business incubator. And you need another source of income in order to pay for your personal expenses. You can either have a part-time job, a seasonal job, a full-time job. We just need to see that you have money enough to pay for utility, rent, food, etc., things like that, and then a little bit of money left over to pay for the loan. Like I said, it's $10,000. The requirements are the same. 575 credit score, no bankruptcies in the last 12 months, no foreclosures in the last 2 years. And then for this one, the requirements when it comes to past due amount, instead of being $3,000 from the traditional business loan, is no more than $500. Because like I said, it's considered startup, so it's a little bit risky when it comes to lending to startup businesses. And finally, we have the Promesa loan. This one is in particular for clients that want to build up their credit. They had a bankruptcy recently, they had a foreclosure recently, they have over $5,000 in collections, medical bills, etc. And then we offer this particular loan to help you rebuild your credit, okay? The maximum loan amount is $2,500, but depending on your cash flow or how you're doing on your business sales, we can probably stretch it to $5,000. Okay, the terms for the loan, they vary for each particular program. It can be 18 months, 30 months. It depends on your personal credit. The interest rate. Our lowest interest rate is 8.99. Our highest is 15.99. Typically, our average is around 11.99 for most of our clients. There's no prepayment penalty, so after you go through the entire process, you fill out the application, qualify for up to $10,000. We request all the documents, bank statements, void checks, IDs. If your startup business plan, the last 12 months of financial projections for the business, we have everything together. We package it up. we do a business analysis. Like I said, if we see that you have steady income coming in every month from the business, and you only pre-qualify for 10,000, I can probably recommend up to 15,000. Then what we do, we give it to the credit committee, the underwriters, and they're the ones who decide, okay, let's just go ahead and approve it for 15, or let's just keep it at 10,000 if they see there's a risk within the industry itself. After the loan is dispersed, we go ahead and transfer the funds directly to your bank accounts, and then you are free to go ahead and start paying 30 days after that. And if you, like I said, if you want to go ahead and pay it off right away the day after, that's good. There's no prepayment penalty. One of the main benefits that we offer is if you do get a loan with us and you pay up to 6 months of the loan, you can apply for a refinance. What happens with the refinance, you pay the outstanding balance at a lower interest rate, and if you need more capital, let's say for inventory or supplies, or you want to go ahead and update your website, or you want to start selling items online, then you can request a little bit more funding through us. If you have any questions, let us know. We're here to help.
And we'll open the questions up after everybody gets through. But Axion is also a good partner with traditional banks like ourselves, because once the company starts, gaining revenues and profits, they'll introduce them to the banking community, and then it's typically a smooth transition into a larger facility with an SBA type loan. So they work very closely with the SBA, and then the banks also work closely with the SBA as well.
Yeah,
So it's a good
exactly.
transition.
A lot of people, when they're looking to borrowing more than $50,000, they go to traditional banks. Unfortunately, traditional banks won't let you borrow less than $50,000. So we get most of our referrals from banks. We don't compete with banks or anything like that. We work with Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of America. They refer us clients, hey, this client needs $30K, can you help them with that? And then we work together as a team, all of us, especially with all the resources that you have here at the NEC too. And LSQ, of course, yeah, I was just telling Julie that in the past month, we've been getting a lot of referrals from LSQ funding. So what happens is we transfer those referrals to our online department in New York, and then they're the ones responsible for providing funding throughout the other 50 states.
Thank you, Adriana. And I forgot to mention, Julie did mention recently, right before the presentation, that they just came into a lot of funding capital recently, and her trunk is full of money. So if you guys need to check her out, they just had a big capital raise. Next, we have Steve Fisk. Steve is with UniKey, and UniKey has I'm going to steal a little bit of your thunder, Steve. Steve, you can fill in the blanks, but this is what has been so impressive. All the talent here is impressive to me, but as I mentioned earlier, they went through the Shark Tank experience, and they had received offers from every one of the sharks, and they turned them down. I don't know if you're a golfer, you ever see that, there's a PGA golf commercial that says, "These guys are good." These guys are good. So Steve, tell us a little bit about that experience and where you are today and where you guys see your company in 3 to 5 years.
Okay. Well, we didn't actually turn them down on the show. We turned them down after the show. But hi, I'm Steve Fisk. I'm the first employee and partner at UniKey. It was founded by Phil Dumas back in 2010. So if you know, back in 2010, it was quite a different landscape than it is now. We were in the recession, so access to capital was a lot more difficult. So when Phil founded UniKey, we kind of got going, created a prototype. Actually, I guess I should explain what UniKey is. Mm-hmm. So UniKey is a Bluetooth access control provider. Our flagship product is Kivo. It's a Bluetooth-enabled lock that works with your phone. So as long as you have your phone in your pocket, in your purse, all you do is walk up and touch the lock, and it unlocks. So it's very nice, very convenient. It's kind of a similar experience to passive entry in your car. If your fob's in your pocket, just grab the handle, it unlocks. So we actually had an access control background. We worked for a previous company that did a biometric deadbolt, a fingerprint deadbolt for Kwikset. From that idea, we kind of evolved it to pull that biometric component out of the user's control and put it on something that you have on your person every day, so your phone. So from that, we got going in 2010, created a prototype, and in 2011, we were ready to get funding to go to market, we needed, I think, roughly around $450,000 to kind of get going, to bring on staff, to buy hardware, that sort of thing. Phil had kind of been going around doing different venture capital talks around the state, but as Phil mentioned, there's not many traditional, when you think of Silicon Valley type venture capitalists in Florida. So that in itself was difficult. So one day, we both watched Shark Tank and we're like, what the heck, let's give it a shot. So my partner Phil is very tenacious, you could say. So he just kind of kept going. After we applied, he just kept on him every week. Shoot him an email, shoot him an email, shoot him an email. So finally, they asked us for an audition tape. I borrowed a video camera from a local PR company to create the audition tape. So from that, we actually shot a Kickstarter audition tape at the same time. We went on to get rejected by Kickstarter, which was pretty funny, but that's another story. So from that, we actually got accepted in. They asked us to come in August of 2011 to shoot, asked Phil. So from there, we shot, and Shark Tank's pretty funny because they never let you know that you're going to be on the show. You go there to film, you have no guarantee that you're even going to film. You film, you have no guarantee it's going to air. So they just kind of tell you every step of the way, so you have no idea. So Phil went. I don't know if any of you have seen it, but it's one of the best episodes they've had because it's the first time all 5 sharks bid, which was incredible. So we went on the show actually trying to get Mark Cuban, who's a technology entrepreneur, to invest. So we actually got him and Kevin O'Leary to invest on the show. So from there, on the show, essentially you have a gentleman's agreement. You shake hands on high-level terms. After the show, you meet with their money people, essentially, and you don't really get to talk to them anymore. And from that, you work out a high-level term sheet of all the points of the deal. From there, you work with those money people, their lawyers, your lawyers, to run through due diligence and kind of go through all the points of the deal. So after a few months of that, we ended up not being able to come to terms and kind of gambled, just hoping that our episode would air. So they kind of told us every month, oh yeah, it might be next month, might be next month. And so finally in May of 2012, the show aired, and it turned out that we were the season finale. So every step of the way, you have no idea how it's going to air. And at the end of the day, it's a TV show, so we know how it ended, but they can kind of make you look any way they want. So up until they aired, we had no idea, how it was going to turn out. And so luckily, it turned out phenomenally. Phil is incredible on the show. He never cracked, that sort of thing that you normally see entrepreneurs do. He's kind of at home in all of it. So when the show aired, it went phenomenally. So even though we didn't take the capital from the show, being on Shark Tank is kind of the gift that keeps on giving because it's re-aired probably 7 to 10 times since then. So we always get renewed interest from that experience. And then after the show aired, we actually had traditional investors start coming towards us. So we had FFBC out of New York. They're a very large tech venture capitalist that came and led our seed round. So they're invested in things like Indiegogo, Clout, and a bunch of other noted technology companies. So they're actually became a really great investment partner. The Sharks, while there's all the kind of glitz and glamour, they're it seems like more for short-term gains than your vested interest in the company. So we actually ended up really lucking out by not taking the deal. So we ended up getting better terms from an investor that was willing to kind of work with us, set us up with their contacts. So from there, a few months later, we were able to set a deal with Kwikset, the largest lock manufacturer in North America. And then a year after that, we were able to have actual locks on the shelves. So we're in Best Buy right around the corner, Lowe's, Home Depot, Apple.com, Amazon, all those. Mostly from the show, but a lot from our personal contacts and tenacity to keep going. And so since then, the locks have been selling very well, and we've been starting to expand into other markets. So we actually license our Bluetooth technology to lock companies. So Kwikset was our first partner in residential locks in North America. So we're now partnering with Miwa Locks. They're an international hotel lock maker. So we're getting into hospitality as well as other international residential locks. So it's pretty exciting. Just a few months ago, we closed our Series A round for $10 million from very noted venture capitalist firms out of California. We had Samsung. We had some strategic partnerships with building manufacturers like Greystar and the like. So it's kind of been a wild ride, and it's still going. So
It's an
I
awesome
don't know if you all have
story.
any questions.
Awesome story. Again, right in our backyard. It's just amazing. Central Florida has a wealth of talent and skills, and that leads us to our next guests here, Jeremy and Chris, who are with Trobo. They brought their product. They're going to tell a little bit about that and walk us through what their experience was with the Quick Starter program.
Sure. So I'm Jeremy. This is Chris. And we are the co-founders of Trobo, the storytelling robot. Trobos are talking plush toys that teach kids 2 to 5 about the science, technology, engineering, and math in the world around them through an iPad app. So we build stories that feature the child. The toy actually reads the stories out loud. There's puzzles every couple pages. And the toy ships with 5 stories. So we're in the process of building that right now. So when we were going to launch our product, Kickstarter and crowdfunding in general seemed like a really good way to do it because not only would it give us access to capital that we wouldn't normally have access to, but more importantly, it was a validation point for us. So we could put the product out on the market. We knew our friends and family would hopefully like it, but beyond that, we wanted to know whether anybody else would want it. So we actually wanted to get outside of our network of people, broadcast as wide as possible, and see if we could raise enough money through purchases or pre-orders in order to do it. So just to explain a little bit what Kickstarter is, Kickstarter is a crowdfunding platform where you basically put your product out there. They want you to be ready to go, so they don't want renderings or anything like that, prototypes with production ready to go. And essentially, they don't like to call it a pre-order platform, but you're trying to get pre-orders for your product. One thing that's kind of novel about Kickstarter versus some of the other crowdfunding platforms is you set your goal, you set the amount of time it's going to take to reach that goal, and if you fall $1 short, you get nothing.
And we were close.
Yeah, we tried to cut it a little close. We were actually sitting in front of our goal was $60,000. We finished with $61,000. We were actually sitting we were out of Canvas downtown, and we were sitting in front of our computers at Canvas at 11:59, and I was tweeting out jokes in response for pledges, so really lame science jokes, and
It worked.
yeah, Chris was really mad at me. He didn't like that. And every once in a while, I'd say, I'll just tweet out for another pledge. And someone would come up and he'd scowl at me. And I'd go, I'm going to have to send out another joke. And then it would work. So our plan all along was to use that money for manufacturing and development of the app. And Chris can talk a little bit more about that.
So actually, once we got the Kickstarter, it was really great. It was late last summer. October was the finish of the Kickstarter. Jeremy had already left his position in a theme park company back in January, and sometime in May, I got to listening to a guy named Richard Bliss, and if you're interested in Kickstarter at all, you should start listening to his podcast. I got really scared because we really hadn't been marketing for the Kickstarter campaign or preparing for it, and so I effectively quit my job on July 4th so that we could go full-time and prepare for the Kickstarter campaign. We stopped development. It was really just getting the word out, either explaining with videos what Kickstarter was, telling our friends and family, educating the population that we were doing this at all, preparing photography, videos, all that kind of stuff, social media accounts, you name it. And even that was late. That was really late to the game. In fact, we pushed back our Kickstarter by a month because we just knew we wouldn't be ready. So if you're thinking about a Kickstarter at all, start marketing for it now. And start building your relationships with PR and anybody else who will listen to you about your product. Try to get them on your team, get their feedback on your product itself, and grow that community before you actually kickstart. And we got lucky. We started out with a startup weekend. Anyone know what a startup weekend is here? So if you have some cool idea, you go to a startup weekend. Friday night, you pitch your idea. You hopefully build a team with some other entrepreneurs who are there, and by Sunday night, you make a pitch. And if your team wins, then you get the status that you won. And we actually won second place. So that was cool. Then Jeremy, who's a networking machine, got us into Starter Studio. Do you know what Starter Studio is? Anyone here? Starter Studio? It's an incubator program headed up by, what's Greg's? Greg Pollock. He's a superstar. You should certainly get to know who Greg is. They're now on their 4th class. They're trying to get people recruited for the 4th class. So if you're interested, work with them. But that built our network here. And then for Kickstarter, we both brought our own personal networks. And as Jeremy said, it was a bit of a rocket ride the entire month. So I want to stop there. Do you want to talk about the grant a little bit now? Okay.
So one thing I will say that you didn't mention was the big thing about Kickstarter. And how many people know what Kickstarter is? I think that's a good question. Okay, more people than we thought when we went into it. So when we thought we went into it, we thought everybody knew what Kickstarter and crowdfunding was, especially in our circles. And what we found kind of late in the game, I would say probably 2 weeks into it, was that nobody knew what Kickstarter was. We actually have been proactive about trying to educate people, but about 2 weeks into it, we started getting questions about, so wait, is this like a charity? Are you guys raising money for a charity? Or do I get part of your company? And then we realized we were in big trouble. So we really made that assumption. That was a poor assumption. The other thing about it is, people hear about all these really successful Kickstarter campaigns like the Pebble Watch or the Coolest Cooler where they raise millions of dollars. Those are the exceptions. Most people, you don't stumble on a Kickstarter campaign. You're brought to it. So part of it is if you're thinking about launching a crowdfunding campaign of any kind, you've got to bring your crowd to it. That's why Chris was talking about how we were panicking, was we had to realize that we had to bring those people, make them aware of what we were doing, and make them come up. So during our Kickstarter campaign, we planned to be someplace every single day during the campaign. Like, I would be speaking at an event in Miami, and Chris would be in Tampa or Alabama, and we were all over the place.
There was one city where we were in one day we were in 4 cities at once.
Yeah.
Trying to get people aware. And we're talking to Million Cups.
Yeah, 1 million cups in 2 different cities.
Simultaneous 1 million cups presentations. So.
And so the other part about it was that it was just, we did trade shows. That was one of the reasons we launched our Kickstarter. When we were doing trade shows at the same time. We did the Maker Faire in downtown Orlando, where we did like 800 demos in 2 days, and tried to get those people to come to our Kickstarter with varying support. We were successful. We raised our $61,000. That goes to manufacturing development. The other thing I wanted to talk about, because we discussed it earlier, was we were fortunate enough we applied for and received a SBIR grant from the National Science Foundation. If anybody knows, so the SBIR program is for high-risk, high-reward research. Every government bureau has them: Department of Defense, NASA, NSF, National Institutes of Health, Department of Education. They're multi-phase grants, but the whole purpose behind them is they want to be in a situation where the government gives you a little bit of money that you wouldn't normally have access to otherwise. You take a gamble, create a company, you hire people, you pay taxes, they go back to Congress and say, remember that little bit of money you gave us? Well, look how many jobs we created. So we were fortunate enough to apply and get that program, and so we're in the middle actually of a phase 1 grant right now. But that's another avenue if any of you are thinking about doing some kind of technology or research project. I would look at the SBIR program. It's really hard to get into, and there's a lot of limits on what you can do with the funding. No marketing, no manufacturing.
It's all about research.
No travel. It's all about research, yeah. So that's another resource out there if you're interested.
Going back to the crowdfunding piece of it, what incents or motivates somebody to contribute?
Well, it's a variety of things. First off, if they are your friends or family or they know you, that's a really big motivator. And you'd be surprised at how many of your own personal network, even on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, even once they understand it, they don't necessarily contribute immediately, but there's quite a psychological roller coaster associated with your decision to contribute to a Kickstarter. And any Kickstarter person who's been through the effort will tell you you should back them on day one, because it's a crowd mentality. If I go to a Kickstarter and I see they're trying to raise $20,000 and only one person has contributed, I won't feel like my dollar is going to make a difference. And so we learned a few things. One thing we learned is near the end of it, you go back to your same network and you explain to them, hey, you know what? If everyone gave $10 more, that would get us to this goal. And you'd be surprised how powerful just letting them know what a small contribution, how that would really change your whole campaign. It totally worked for us. It was really surprising. We had people come back and they had initially maybe given $100 and one of ours came back with 1,000. So it can be really powerful to show them they are part of a winning experience. That's another thing. If you're friends with them, show them they're part of a winning experience. And also, the product has to be compelling. Your story's got to be compelling, but your product has to be compelling too. We happen to have something that's really sweet, and everyone wants to hug it. So if you guys want hugs, we'll have a line up here a little later. But certainly that's part of it. Any other things you want?
Oh yeah, one thing I'll just say is, even since the Kickstarter campaign, those people are our team. You know, they're the people that kind of backed us before we were out there, and so we keep them updated on everything that we're doing. You know, the positives and the benefits. You know, things that are going well, things that aren't going so well. But we keep them updated. We also look for feedback. So the product comes with 5 stories. We put out a list of about 40 story topics and had our Kickstarter backers vote on what the first 5 stories were going to be. So we involve them in the process all along and keep them involved. And it not only does it help us make a better product that people want, but the hope and the reality is they feel some ownership of the product too. They may not own equity in the company, but they feel some ownership, and hopefully they'll tell their friends, and you never know who their friends are, or somebody may know in a store or something like that that gets you out there quicker.
So of the 61,000 that you raised, that was contributed, how many contributors were there and what was the average contribution?
Yeah, we had 400 contributors. So one of the things about Kickstarter is it's a hybrid, right? We talked earlier about it being a pre-order system, but it's also sort of a gifting investment system too, right? So the very significant contributors obviously are people that we knew and wanted to help us. But once you get past your crowd, the real market validation comes with those people who just really want to buy the product, right? And so it was roughly half and half of our contributors were people we knew and the other half were people we didn't.
Yeah, I'll tell a funny story. So there's this blog or magazine called TechCrunch, which is very influential in the tech industry. We had PR people. We had a PR company that we were really trying to work hard with to get on there, and then Chris sent an email to somebody who was a writer for them, and we didn't think anything would come up. And then all of a sudden, I was in the Apple store picking up my iPhone 6, and my phone started going crazy. I was like, "What's going on?" And there was an email, and it said, "Check out TechCrunch." So I checked out TechCrunch, and we were the lead story on TechCrunch on iPhone 6 launch day. And so I was like, wow, this is crazy. We started seeing some orders from it, and then I just basically spent the rest of the day going around the Apple store, launching that on every browser I could see in the Apple store and leaving it up.
So we were also the lead app in that Apple store that day too.
Yeah, right.
So,
No,
yeah.
not really.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for sharing your experience with us. Since we started late, we still have about 15 minutes left for a little Q&A. So we'd like to open up to all of you to ask whatever questions you may have of the group. Yes, sir.
Okay, so Amazon and Kickstarter, Amazon curates the money. So when you support somebody, use your Amazon account. So combined, they take 10% right off the top. So we walked out the door with $55,000. As far as attributing it to various things, we really don't have a marketing budget, to be honest with you. And we don't pay ourselves anything. So all that money went to manufacturing and some sales efforts. I mean, we did go to a couple of conventions. Our patent, we also paid for our patent with that, and the inventory necessary to ship and content development. So, yeah.
If the real question is how much of that $61,000 do we spend about $120,000 of that $61,000. It was very grassroots. Yeah, I mean, it was really just labor. The trade show, we got lucky on the trade show. So there was a trade show called the ABC Kids Show, which is one of the bigger children's retail conventions, and they actually had a startup program, so you could get a booth for way less than it would cost. And it happened to be during the show. They didn't actually tell you that your booth was in a closed-off room that got no traffic, but that's, yeah, you live, you learn. What can you do?
It worked, though. Yeah.
But you know what, though? With that said, we did the travel for the convention. That was Las Vegas. We did pay $700 for one press release from a company out of California. They were a PR company. But that was a little late in the game. We should have had them organized way up front. We got a lot of interest from Good Morning America, CNN News, but it was at the tail end of the campaign. So we missed the boat on that one, to be honest. And the rest of it was all me and him on social media: Pinterest, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and Google Plus.
Yeah, we were, just the last thing I'll say, if we can get other questions, but I will say that there was this whole debate between us the whole time, like, do we go back on LinkedIn and Facebook and burn all of our social currency? And we basically decided we're never going to be able to get a job anywhere anyway after this whole thing, so might as well keep doing. Yeah, it's gone.
Yes, sir.
So that's a great question. When we talk about asset-based finance, if you don't have assets, you're not going to be able to fit into an asset-based line. So if you need money to get to the point where you're creating assets like inventory and accounts receivable and you've got some sales, you have to dig into your pockets, you have to borrow from friends and family. You can try to go out and raise some capital on some of these sites we heard about today. But the type of financing, when we talk about asset-based lending and factoring, you have to have an asset, and that goes for banks as well. So you're seeking investors.
And I'll add, from a traditional standpoint, as I mentioned, pure startup ventures is not the space that we play in. You don't want us to be in, because our source of funding is from you guys, our depositors. And of course, we have insurance to insure against those things, but the government doesn't want to utilize that insurance. So we're not in that game. But to answer your question, there are situations that we will fund a startup operation for an existing customer that's in a similar line business that's expanding into a different one, and we will finance those startup costs or working capital, but again, we have to match it to a short-term type asset. So, but if it's like a pure working capital and we base it on projections, so we'll have a kind of a short-term repayment on that once we see that there's going to be a projection cash flow surplus that's going to do that. So we will do that in those type of unique situations, but by and large, whether it's a long-term loan or an equipment loan, we match the term with the life of that asset.
And I think the SBA could also possibly be a resource depending on what industry you're in. The SBA could be a resource as well.
Yeah.
Would microloans be an alternative?
It depends on the size, but quite frankly, it could be.
We could, but it depends. It depends on what sort of business you're thinking about starting up. If it's a store for a location, you need to get a space rented, pay for lease, etc. We do require at least 6 months of operations and revenue, unless you're thinking about starting your business from home. Like I already said, you have enough spaces set up at home. You're working with the business incubator. Let's say, for example, the University of Central Florida already has a business incubator, and things like that.
Let's go over to this gentleman here.
That's a great question. So our loans start at $0 and go all the way up to $15 million a month. Just really depends on what you need. I funded 10 startups last year. I funded 3 so far this year. So when I say startups, I mean a company that has a business plan, that has projections, that has potential sales, that they're doing business with credit-worthy customers. Okay, but they just don't have the money to wait to get paid once they deliver their good or service. Okay, so in the business-to-business world, when you do business with another company, you give them net terms, right? Walmart's a great example. I'll use them over and over. If you want to do business with Walmart, you have to be able to survive 90 to 120 days after you've delivered your good to them, and they probably sold it, off the shelves 60 days ago, but you're not going to get your money for 90 to 120 days. Most companies cannot survive that time frame. That's where LSQ will step in, and we will purchase that receivable from you, and that's factoring. We'll purchase that receivable from you, and as soon as Walmart acknowledges they want the goods, they've got them, you don't have to wait 90 or 120 days. Your money is right now, and you go on, create your next invoice. That's what factoring is. It's very transaction-oriented. Does that answer your question? We love startups, and so does Axion. That's a good question because we heard fees over here in the 8.5% to 15.5% range. Our fees are on a discount structure. So just like in the business world, we'll continue to talk about what's normal. If you have a customer that wants to pay you early, you can give them a discount on that invoice if they pay you in 10 days instead of in 30 days of 2%. That's standard. It's called 2% net 30, 2% 10 net 30. At LSQ, instead of waiting 10 days and taking a 2% discount, you'll get your money in 1 day from us, and it'll cost you on average somewhere between 1.5% and 2% for that whole 30 days. So it's not cost prohibitive. Many of my clients figure out what their cost of working capital is, and they build it in the price of their product. That's the smart way to do it. Does that make sense? I got some glazed over eyes. Yeah? It's a cost of doing business. Build it in your product cost.
Yes, the gentleman's name is Richard Bliss, Bliss. And he also has a friend named Jamie Stegmeyer. Yeah, Richard Bliss's podcast is called Funding the Dream. It's a great way to listen while you're driving to and from work. Jamie Stegmeyer, if you look up Stone Meyer Games, he has almost a daily blog he seems to post about kickstarting. So these two guys really lead that community.
Thank you.
Sure. So I'm actually on the design side, so I might glaze over a couple of these things. But so as far as the tech side's concerned, when developing the budgets, Phil went off of how we kind of did things at our previous company, that biometric access control company that we were at. Just from the cost standpoint. But then there were some hard costs that we knew about with equipment. So for getting the Bluetooth stack and things like that, it does cost a lot of money to get it when you are a startup. However, after Shark Tank aired, we did have a lot of distributors coming to us, and a lot of them actually will give you those things up front for free if you promise to buy their certain circuit board part. So that did help with those. So as far as manpower, I guess you could say you kind of estimate from your statement of work, and you can kind of go about estimating hours required, and then you can blow all that out of the water, and then reality sets in. So I would say it was probably 3 to 4 times more difficult than we had anticipated. So it was a lot of late nights, even after bringing on people.
I would like to further address your question, sir, about the cost of factoring, because Julie is correct. You build that into your model and your price that you're offering or the service that you're offering. But I think where you're going with that, if it was 1% and the receivables turn every 30 days, effectively that's a 12% interest rate, annual cost of capital. However, they're getting the money within 24 to 48 hours. That's providing them more working capital to funnel into their business to generate more sales. So it's not that simple. You'd have to, there are statistical or analytical models out there that would really evaluate what that true cost of capital is for a loan like that, and I would venture to guess it would be substantially less than the 12%.
Well, that's a good point. And it's really about you being able to deploy cash and drive more net income.
Exactly.
Okay? Yeah.
So what happens when Walmart returns half the order? How do y'all deal with that?
Guess what? That happens. Sometimes goods get damaged. Sometimes I use the widget example. You ordered purple and you sent them pink ones and they're going to reject half of it or all of it. I mean, all kinds of crazy stuff happen. In our space, once the money's out the door, we're going to have to work with you, the business owner, to cure that. If Walmart absolutely rejects the order, then we have to work through that with you. If Walmart discounts it tremendously, so Books A Million, if they're still in business, was notorious for doing this. You go on the shelf for a certain period of time, and then you go on another shelf at 15% off, and then you go to the 70% off table. And I had a client that was selling games to them, and his stuff kept going to the 70% off table. And that shifted our advance rate. So what we do is instead of advancing 80 or 85 or 90%, we'll lower the advance rate to accommodate dilution. And that's complicated for a lot of folks out there. So if you want to talk about that more offline, I'd be happy to talk to you about that.
I think any of the folks here will make themselves available if you want to have a little one-on-one with them, but I want to thank you ladies, Julie and Adriana, gentlemen, Chris, Steve, Jeremy, thank you so much. And again, folks, this is right here in our backyard. We have the resources, we have the talent. Orlando is the great place to be. So thank you all for coming, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you.